Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear students, Assalamu alaikum. Alhamdulillah, we are starting online teaching. We have already discussed different topics such as Aristotle, church-state conflict, Machiavelli, and Jane Boden. Our today's discussion is about most famous thinker Thomas Hobbes. Thomas Hobbes was an English philosopher. His period was 1588 to 1679. In the history of Western political thought, Hobbes was the first English philosopher who produced a comprehensive work on political philosophy. He gave a new orientation to the political theories. Hobbes wrote many books, many essays. His most famous contributions are Leviathan, De Corpore, Human Nature, and De Corpore Politico, De Cive, and Elements of Laws. His most important, most famous book was Leviathan. Hobbes remained associated with Cavendish family. He saw many ups and downs in the political history of England during his long, valuable life of 91 years. He saw the most exciting period of English history, the period of English Revolution. He advocated the theory of divine rights of kings. Overall, his philosophy reflected circumstances of his period. Thomas Hobbes' Leviathan is commonly described as one of the greatest masterpiece of political theory in the English language and the first of the great social contract treatise. Thomas Hobbes presented different theories, but his most important theories are about the nature of man and the state of nature and theory of social contract. First of all, we examine his theory, his views about nature of man. Thomas Hobbes very clearly, in a realistic way, explains about the nature of man. He said, man is selfish, self-seeking, and he is always wants to seek his own interest. Thomas Hobbes highlighted that Two fundamental drives of human nature are: first, striving for desirable, and second, an avoidance of undesirable. Various conditions of these forces account for all human feelings and for all actions. The chief object of man's desire is self preservation, and what he wants most to avoid is loss of war. So, according to Hobbes, security is the greatest good and insecurity is the greatest evil. Man wants to be sure of his life and possessions. He further explained that security is attainable, however, only through the possessions of power. No man ever has enough power, since he will always seek more in order to protect that which he already has. The desire for power is thus unlimited, although the supply is limited, and herein lies the cause of conflict among men. The struggle for power among men is complicated and emphasized by their relative equality. Men seek the same ends, they have generally the same capacity to achieve them. According to Hobbes, the equality of men is a source of difficulty because not of satisfaction. Thomas Hobbes explains that by nature man is individualistic, self-seeking, fearful, and wants security. Now we examine Thomas Hobbes' views about state of nature. Hobbes presented a dark picture of state of nature. He considered state of nature as a state of war where every man against every man. In this state of nature, according to Hobbes, nothing could be just because there was no laws or no notion of right or wrong. There was only force and take what you can. In such a condition, there is no civilization, no cultivation, no place for industry, no development in culture, no art, and no progress. He presented worst picture of that environment of a state of nature. where fear, danger of death prevailed. Next most important point of this discussion is that according to Hobbes, there are both rights and laws present in the state of nature. Each person has a right to do anything which, in his opinion, will promote his own security. So, reason enables man to understand those laws of nature which, when observed, can provide salvation. Enforcement is necessary to give it such real meaning. Next most important part of Hobbes' philosophy was his views about social contract. According to Hobbes, the people, to get rid of the state of nature, entered into a social contract and surrender all their rights and powers to one man or rule over themselves. In this contract, men surrender to one man or an assembly of men all their rights completely and without any reservation on a basis of reciprocity. Thomas Hobbes further explains that social contract is important part of people's life because Hobbes' theory of social contract presented his ideas about sovereignty, which is most integral part of his philosophy. Main points of his social contract theories are: number 1, the sovereign, he may be a man or a body of man, is supreme and absolute. Next most important point, sovereign was the result of the covenant and was above the contract. Next part of social contract is the powers assigned to him could not be taken away from him. Men had no right to revolt against the sovereign. Law is the command of the sovereign, who alone has power to enforce them. He is the lawmaking authority. The sovereign has the power to declare war and conclude peace. After examining Thomas Hobbes' sovereign power, we can find out that sovereign of the Thomas Hobbes was also a source of justice. His concept of sovereignty is indivisible. It is duty of the sovereign to provide security to his subjects, to protect their properties, and to work for their betterment and welfare. According to Hobbes, there may be different forms of governments: monarchy, democracy, aristocracy, but sovereignty always remained indivisible. He preferred monarchy as a best form of government. If we analyze Thomas Hobbes' views, then we find out that Thomas Hobbes highlighted very clearly in a realistic way importance of the state, utility of the state, and important role of the state. After examining Thomas Hobbes' major theories, state of nature, nature of man, and his theory of social contract, now we conclude Thomas Hobbes' topic. A most famous writer, George Sabine, wrote in his book A History of Political Theory, and he says individualism is the thoroughly modern element in Hobbes' philosophy. It is also individualistic in the ends of the state to protect individuals' life and property. Thomas Hobbes very clearly highlighted that the state is not the end of the individual, but the individual is most certainly the end of the state. Thomas Hobbes' most important contribution was his views about realist thinker. Hobbes was also considered a classical realist thinker. He gives a perfect theory of sovereignty and absolute powers to the state. He is the first political philosopher with clear and scientific approach towards doctrine of absolute unlimited sovereignty of the state. Before him, the concept of sovereignty was properly developed by Machiavelli, Jane Bowden, but it was Hobbes who gave it a final touch acceptable even today. While concluding Thomas Hobbes' topic, we considered Hobbes as a greatest thinker, greatest writer, intellectual in the history of political philosophy. And that is the end of our today's discussion.